Hi Capricorn. My hair is kind of all over the place, so I'll be touching it and a lot. And I also wanted to just say that there's a reason why I did your axis last. I wanted to be able to kind of feel through the beginning of the season before getting to you. Fellow earth sign this season, and yeah, what I think is important to acknowledge is that there has been solid build for a while. There has been moments of, you may find your moments of where you hit plateaus and you just don't, it's like you don't know how to accept them. It's like it's either you're building or you're not. You're building or you're not, and that's not true. Have you ever considered that maybe those plateaus or those times in your life where you get to kind of chill, are times to reassess, where you can reassess, where you can take a minute, where you can not just keep going, because sometimes that makes you, the mountain goat fall, or that, the metaphor with the ego. It's like you rise so much, and then all of a sudden, when you actually needed a break, you get sick or something else happens, and it could have been easier. And now you're beginning to notice, maybe in this plateau, maybe in this time I need leisure. Maybe this time, that's what can be the most creative time, or the time where you're able to reassess, where you're able to take notice. We are in Mercury retrograde, Libra, in a sign, Virgo, ruled by Mercury. Also, all information to work with me is below the second part. This time it's going to be a little different. So the second part is more like second part where you see the cards, and extended where I go through the cards a little bit more, and there will be different sections that helps me get a lot more detailed with the intuitive aspect, and that is always my forte. So we're gonna keep going. All right, we have you maybe at a fork, and again, instead of seeing it as a time where you're not being productive, maybe see it as a time where you need to let this chapter close, and know that wherever you're at in the fork in the road, the best and very cliche thing that I love is that no matter which way you go, you're gonna get exactly where you need to be. You're gonna go exactly where you need to go, and it will be and give you a lot more depth of understanding where you're at. Maybe it's time to let go of something that's coming to the surface, or whatever is coming up from a time where you weren't doing as good. And now you're able to see that in a different light. You're able to understand that it's okay to be where you are, and also have come from a certain place, and you understand where you've come from, or what you've been through, or the hard work that you put in. But there's also something about being just as grateful yet unattached to those things, because if you become too attached, then sometimes we can become overbearing or a little bit more controlling on how paint dries, and you wouldn't look at paint and say, you're supposed to dry this way. And I know that sometimes it's hard to say that about your own life, or whatever you're going through in terms of the way your body feels right now. You may feel like your body wants to move a little slower, and your mind's kind of like, why? But it's because it's necessary. It might be a time of harvest for some of you, and if you don't allow yourself the time and the moment of the season, the way it unfurls, I love that word, by the way, is we come into the foliage of the fall, depending on where you live. But we come into the fall, we come into different colors. We come into, like, where did these colors come from? It was just so bright, you know, so fresh. We had such bright colors, maybe even pastel, but most of the time they're very vibrant in the summer. And then we come into a very warmingness of the fall. And so September is always this time of transition, and transition is not always easy, especially when you're not even aware that you're transitioning or weren't expecting it. And you begin to see the light in a way where you need to see it for the long run. You know, when you see when they say seeing the light in the dark times, well, it's really important to see that now, because now you realize it's not just something to say, it's something you need for the long term. You need to be able to come back to and set yourself up, if you're aware of this now, when you don't feel that way, when life does get maybe overwhelming, or when things happen in a way where you weren't so much as expecting it, but weren't necessarily unwelcoming it, denying it. You may be thinking a lot about, again, your future, what you want that to look like, what fulfillment looks like to you. And these 10s all coming out from 9 to 10 right away. You can find yourself extremely lucky and fortunate this month if you find that light and then realize it and have fun with it and be in the moments you're in, instead of thinking like of this time in your life as something that it's not. Maybe in the past it was more like a plateau, or it felt like one, or you feel like you always need to be working on something, whether it's internal, external. But now you get a chance to like be in this moment, you know, be in the enjoyment of what you've created and see the light there, because a lot of great things are happening. If you aren't aware of that perception, I'm pointing to the brain because it's almost like a light in the brain or a light in the eye is off, and then all of a sudden it turns on. You're kind of like, oh wow, look at how lucky I am, look at how fortunate I am. It's just it's like a constant redirection of that. We'll get to why that's so important as I continue to pull cards, but it's that fork. And if you're looking at it a certain way in your mind and you're not actually looking at the forks for what they are, which is just the next leg of your journey, and yet you don't really know which way to go, it's remembering that either way that you go, you're gonna come to the end. And what your choice is and your control seems to be in this moment is how you perceive that, what that looks like for you. And if you can control that, then it becomes, and then you're able to address things in a way where it's, and address things that you may have been wondering or questioning recently as to like why you can't see them in a certain way, or why it only feels like kind of gloomy or dark again. And it's because something's being squeezed out of you. A diamond, nothing weird, but something's being, you know, pressured out of you. And this time it needs you to recognize and like, or grab onto faith and take it for a ride. You know, show them how it's done. You may even come into it spontaneously, where you find yourself talking about that, or coming into conversations about faith, or what that looks like to you and what it looks like to have a well-rounded life. Because we have like this half circle and the circle of the Wheel of Fortune, and then we have the Ace of Pentacles, which is coming into fruition. So something will be coming into fruition by the end of the month for you, especially in terms of the way you see your life. And in order to find that it comes that way, or find that you meet yourself there, you have to remember that whenever something, whether it's the body, the mind, the spirit, your emotions that are out of tune or out of alignment, or when one of them feels like they're out of alignment, they're all kind of struggling to keep churning if not given the right energy. I know that sounds extremely like, easy, but it's true. And if you find that, I find that it's true. So if you find that that's off, remember how this is that pinnacle of like being unattached, but also understanding the effort, the energy that you put into it, also understanding that you are fertile ground. So be wary of maybe unexpected or expected pregnancies. This is also you just taking a look at everything you have, what you've built, what you've made for yourself. You know, it's not something, yes, you do it because you're good at it. Yes, you do it because you want it to a certain degree. However, it's this beautiful time in your life if you allow it to be. And you have the strength too. I think this was what it really brings you to, is the strength to move on. Because the more you become unattached, you may realize that it's coming from maybe this piece of what you thought, like what you saw a purpose as, and you became very attached to possibly the material side of that, and it's not adding up anymore. And so you need all of the strength and to go through this to realize that you can move forward, you can let go, you can detach from things regardless of how much work you put into it or how much energy you gave it. And if nothing's necessarily going wrong, then why do you feel this way, or why are things happening like this? You may also find that you may feel more distant from a relationship you put energy into. There may be some conversations to have. You know, and it could bring up things about both parts of your lives, you and this person in your life, or someone that you may, you know, have started something with. You may find that there is more similarity to maybe a very prominent figure in both of your lives. And if this is about just yours, it's you feel a lot, after this decision, you feel a lot more in control. You may hurt a little, you may feel a little pain, you may feel like, wow, you didn't realize how much of your energy was going into that. And you find it easier to confront that situation, especially because it's like nagging at you. It's kind of like the root of everything that's happening, but it can be hard to do something you maybe were never taught to do or shown to do, or in a way that's not harming either side intentionally. Like, yes, you're gonna find that you have those repercussions, but you may find yourself feeling a lot more capable of expressing vulnerabilities, a lot more free from that which you shied away from before, from things or saying things or acknowledging things. Even if it's just acknowledging them and having that conversation with yourself, you're free from the idea that it has to be extremely hard or it has to come down to a certain kind of experience or a situation. It can't just be this feeling that you're feeling and you talk about it or you talk through it or you feel through it, and you realize that if you're not acting upon it or realizing that it may be why the other things are trickling down into your mind, into your body, and you find that there's a lot of freedom at the other side of this. And I know that's maybe what you're scared of, which is weird, but in this time I get why it could be scary. But the freedom is coming from what you decide and where you decide to place emphasis in your life, or where you decide to place what's important to you, what feels like purpose to you, and how work and what you do or what you're creating and how that relates to that and how that's a part of that, and what that can and how seeing that could be beneficial for productivity or positivity or positive outcome. That's it. I wanted this to be more of a little bit of a conversation between me and the Capricorns, because I feel like you could feel some type of way if you're being like too criticized this month, or overly criticized where it's unnecessary, because you're like, well, what do you really have to criticize me about? And maybe it's like just your attitude, and it's like, well, let's just have a conversation about it. Let's realize why it's like this. Let's like just put some things together instead of, you know, this is what's happening and this is what needs to change, and make it more of a mathematical equation like I had to do for Sag. That was a little different. Through this, you may have the constant reminder, if it's not just coming from me, I feel like you might hear this from someone else, is that it's best to be really easy on yourself this month. Be a little easy. You'll find that through that ease, it'll be easier to improve wherever you been wanting to improve. It'll be actually easy to do those kinds of things. The easier you are on yourself, and you'll realize that certain things will come through very easily for you. And you don't understand why, but like that's just how it is. And especially if you talk about things that you're skilled at, you know, people actually want to hear what you have to say. I think we talked about that last month too. The earth signs are like, people are like kind of craving the earth sign knowledge right now, I feel. And also maybe there's a part of your voice that you even find this month, because it's between the soft yet stern and intelligent and sophisticated sides of you, the different parts that come together. There might be, through this, you may find that there is something to celebrate, something to acknowledge. You could maybe, if some of you are having a hard time with overindulging in certain things, you may find that a reasoning to why. Maybe it's a grief of your youth if you're older, or if you've had to take on a lot of responsibility recently in your life, and that's kind of Mercury and Libra, that's kind of bringing to everyone's attention, especially in retrograde, was like, well, what are your responsibilities and what's not being responded to? It's a great way to look at it. I'm just thinking about it right now. I've needed a lot of downtime and non-thinking recently, and I find that whenever I'm need that, or being guided to do that for myself, some things come easier to me. And we find that there is a responsibility to tending to those things where you can enjoy, and not just, so 3 of Pentacles, so 3 of Cups, and not just do because you can. There's an enjoyment to it, there's a leisure to it, there's a relaxation to it where you actually feel it in your body, and that response is received. And through that, for some of you, you may get into conversations about what has happened before, or these intimate details of things in your life that you may not have given up so easily, but now you kind of can look at them as something that, the word rejoice, that you can almost rejoice in, because they don't control you anymore, if they have, or you found how those things have almost have you held as a vice instead of you holding it as a vice, where those vices can control you to an extent, and control like how you choose to live your life, how you choose to do your routines in your life. And right now, it seems like the biggest thing is whatever has been like really not just on your mind, but in your heart, about what you want in terms of partnership, what's true, and what you feel responsible to. with yourself, like what maybe you have right now and how you want to take it further, what you see and you see the future, or what you don't have and what you really want, and you're unwilling, like you're almost at a place where you're so sure, and it makes you, and even if you visualize, and if you don't, I suggest you try to visualize this life that you really want and then give it to yourself. Like if that's not something that's in your view right now, how can that become possible? And then start from there and make that the first step that you might want to take. Mars and Gemini, Mercury and Libra are, if you have a Libra or a Gemini in your life, it's things are going to come out, things are going to be said, you want to say things, and there's possibility for a conversation, and through these different interactions you may find that missing piece, you may find that faith, you may find that understanding, that maybe it's love, maybe it's this interplay with another person that brings you even closer to what feels like divinity or God. It brings you closer to that spirit realm, and through that kind of relationship you find yourself maybe interpreting it, and you're with yourself, if you haven't already, that you can have that kind of interaction when you're alone as well, or when you're alone, if you're not partnered, or if you're choosing to break up. Because I know those are 3 different options and it seems so generic, but right now that's kind of fair game for you, because you're finding that there's so much to enjoy and there's so much to gain in your life, that you now are coming to know what you really want, and like not just what you really want in terms of the material, but it's like what you want your life to look like, and that's different for everyone, but what you want that to look like. And Virgo season is also giving you the steps, so it's pretty sweet, and there's a lot of love, but there's a lot being said, and there's a lot being heard, and there's a lot being shared. So listen, speak, do all the things, and just remember that this conversation isn't stopping anytime soon, even if it's stopping with a particular person or situation in your life. Okay, Capricorn? And the second part will be in a link below. It's more of an extended this month. And then my podcast is also below. A new episode will be up soon. If it's not already, check it out. And all information to work with me one-on-one is also there. Okay?